Thank you for having me. I gave a talk here back in 2012 for the IGDA that was filmed by Craig when Craig was running the whole thing with Hazel. I think it's the IGDA Scotland's biggest ever video because I swore quite a lot. I got a tweet from Frankie Boyle going, "You filthy mouse." Right. So the talk was called Developers Stop Being Shit. And it was all about developers and stopping being shit. Tonight I'm going to introduce the sequel of a sort, and it's called Stop Making Video Games. Possibly a controversial topic for the IGDA and a room full of game developers and students. How many of you here are game developers already? Yay! How many of your students studying game development? Okay, stop doing shit. I found your level. Good. My name's Brian Baglow. I run the Scottish Games Network. Do any of you read scottishgames.net? The rest of you suck. I want to see tweets. Little professional tip, always put your Twitter username up front. Putting it at the end is pointless because the next person's coming on. I want to see tweets everywhere. I want to see your faces light up with your smartphones. If I don't get at least 7 tweets, I'm coming back every single month to do this again. So this is a little observation. I've spent an awful lot of time working outside the video game sector over the last year, talking to a lot of people who don't live or are comfortable in the video game sector. And I've got a few insights that I think can help us all achieve happiness. So, why would you want to stop making video games? Video games are awesome. Video games do things that no other medium can. And we do video games really, really well. Scotland made Grand Theft Auto. It was a game that came out initially in 1997, 17 years ago. I understand it's doing quite well. Right? But it doesn't have to be the massive commercial successes. We've got games now that are going out and doing something that is absolutely phenomenal, which is making the mundanity of spreadsheets an entertainment pastime, which is quite something. Or you can combine the two. You can have the commercial success and the indie creds, and you can go all Minecraft. But there's lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of games out there. A lot of games. And in Scotland, you know what? We actually make a reasonable amount of games. And I've got the stats and facts and figures to back this up, something that nobody else in the world has, because I sat and did this on the train this afternoon. So you know you can trust this. Last year, because I counted using my blog, Scotland had 93 games that were released. 93. That's not too bad. That's reasonable. Thank you. Switch your phone off. If I have to come up and beat you, I will, and it'll be on camera. Would you like to see how this all breaks down? Shall we drill down into the figures? Excellent. Of those games, 90% were original new intellectual property. Go Games! Only 8 of them were from the pusillanimous whelps that decided to go out and, make money. But let's drill down further. I did a little bit of back of the fag packet reckoning. And the industry that we represent, the industry that is here in Scotland tonight, went out and built games that really, spanned the genres. We're like jazz. We spanned all of the different types of games out there. Last year, you'll be proud to know that Scotland produced 21% of the output from Scotland were quiz and puzzle games. Go originality! Strategy, 8%. Kids games, more than 15%. More than 16%, in fact. Other, where you might expect all of the really weird stuff, only 10% of the games we produced were so indefinable that I had to create an other category. But where did those games come out, Brian? I hear you ask. Okay, I'll assume that I heard you ask. You might be surprised to learn that the overwhelming majority were on iOS, and followed by Android, and then browser games. But we held our own. We had a whopping 3 games on the Ouya, 1 game on the Nook, PlayStation Network, 1 game. And we had a board game, and I actually salute those guys because they did something a little bit different. And it was Kickstarter funded, so fair play to them. But you know what? I use this slide a lot. This is why you use pictures. You don't have the stuff that you are saying because we can read faster than you talk. Use pictures, you can make stuff up as you go. The thing is, I understand, right? In the old days, I started back in 1994 at DMA. And in those days, you worked for a big studio. You wanted to work in games, you had to work at a big studio. You wanted to get a game out onto the market, it had to be on console. And for that, you needed a large upfront investment from a publisher. And if your studio was lucky enough to create a game that was a hit, you were working on that game and its sequels for the rest of your professional lives. Which is why franchises and sequels like, chosen entirely at random. See, I don't even know which bit of that you're laughing at. There's so much to choose from. Does the man ever close his fucking trap? So franchises and sequels were safe. You knew you had an audience. And the chances are, if you worked at a big studio, you were working on that franchise forever. So now that the rules have changed, I totally get why studios want to pursue the originality route. Why would you go out and work on something that's not yours? Okay, the biggest value, the greatest value is working on something that's yours, right? And then when you've got 150, 170, 190,000 downloads, that's where you start raking it in. Hands up everyone who's got 190,000 downloads of anything. Was it original? Does it help cure cancer? A round of applause for Reality, I think. Well done, guys. That's what I like to hear. Why don't you tell me these things? I could find out on Facebook. So I'm not saying you shouldn't work on original new games. I'm saying that your view of video games, your definition of video games is shit. It's this guy's fault. Fuck that guy. You know how many quiz and puzzle games he's got in that room? About 3, and they're probably all buzz. He's not playing the games that we're making. So why are we making these games? Oh, it could be because it's a bigger world than the people who shop in Game Station and live in Game Station and wear Sega football tops. Here's the thing. Video games people are incredibly creative. They're very technically aware. And they're also entirely insular and isolated from the rest of the goddamn world. A lot of the things that you do and that you think about can be linked directly back to a game from 1978. Can anyone tell me what that game is? Seriously? Okay, we can do the Frankie Boyle bit. How you doing, me man? Nice beard. You steal it off your mum? No. We're not doing that. We're not doing that. So, in Space Invaders, you shot Space Invaders. When you killed Space Invaders, what happened? After you killed a few, the game got faster. The game got faster, why? It was a feature. Because you died quicker, you got 3 lives. After you had lost 3 lives, what happened? You had to put money in. Space Invaders was invented to make money. Oh my God! We're an industry! Please, please, nobody tell Notch, he might leave. Yeah, on his yacht, so yeah. Here's the reality, ladies and gentlemen. I've spent the last several years going around and talking to the rest of the world. I come to get to talk to you lovely people, but I think of you as my base. I talk to a lot of games people, but you go out and you talk at film festivals, you talk at television festivals, you talk at science and book and technology festivals, and you find out that the rest of the world are now looking at games and going, how do we get some of that? How do we use that? You guys have got this incredible audience that are more engaged than anything. You watch a film, you walk away. That's 90 minutes of your life. Very few people, unless you watch Twilight, interact with a film more than 7 hours a day. And they all tend to be girls with really heavy eye makeup. Only if you're in Team Edward, obviously. Musicians are now trying to figure out ways of making digital and interactive media work for them. Theatre companies are trying to figure out ways of making this technology thing work for them. You'll all be aware, I'm sure, that the National Theatre of Scotland worked with Quartic Llama and did Other, which is the Little Walking Tour, the game that exists only here in Dundee. You've all done it? Okay, how many of you are aware that you live in Dundee? Okay. If you've got an Apple phone, download this and go and do it. You start outside Dundee Rep, you stick some headphones in, go and play it. It's amazing. Okay. If you're going to heckle, at least be audible. You don't have an iPhone. Great. Well, that says more about you than us. Okay? Get a real job. Even broadcasters, the public service broadcasters, BBC, Channel 4, now have to have digital elements in any new commission that they produce. And that doesn't mean having a website. It means that they've got to find ways of using all of the new platforms and devices and ways of interacting with an audience that they don't understand. Who's going to do that for them? Well, we're coming on to that. If only. Even the public sector, even councils, Edinburgh City Council, are now looking at ways of replicating being in Edinburgh in the digital realm. How do you even start to conceive of what that means? Okay, so you can do ghost tours, or you can buy tartan crap. That's the really, really basic stuff. That's what's going to happen if you bring in the consultants. Tram simulator. I don't like you. I live in Edinburgh. My parents died on a tram. Well, waiting for a tram. But more and more and more people are now wondering how the hell they make this interactive media work for them. And here's the thing, guys. Interactive media is completely changing the world. All of the creative industries, whether you're making film or music or writing a book or producing a play or making a film, interactive media is changing the way that your project is created, distributed, monetized, and consumed. Have any of you ever watched a video clip on your smartphone? Yeah, filmmakers are looking at that and going, we don't understand. Why won't you go to the big building with the white wall and the special machine with the bright light? Because it's not 1860. The horse galloping towards us, we're not going to dive out the way anymore. Things have moved on. Technology progresses. But when all of these people want to do something in digital and want to do something in interactive, and they want to find new ways of engaging with their users, who are they going to talk to? They're sure as hell not going to talk to game developers. Apart from the fact that all of these guys are dead now. Well, actually, they're not dead. They're dead to me. Especially the ones that are millionaires, but we'll ignore that. But they're not talking to game developers. No! Woe betide, they're talking to these guys. We empower visionaries to lead meaningful brands. What a massive self-abuse expert that guy must be. They're talking to digital design agencies. This is a phenomenon that you may not be familiar with. A digital design agency, ladies and gentlemen, is a company that does cool stuff with tech, right? But in the old days, this is what you and I would probably have called a web developer. But now they do video, and they've maybe got somebody that does research, and they're a digital design agency, and they are eating our lunch. They are leaving us for dead. This is the best non-games company I have come across in the last couple of years. They did a little event in Edinburgh at the end of January called the Crossover Labs, where they had people from film and television, they had writers, musicians, comic book authors, and they had these guys running in the halls. Anyone heard of Running in the Halls? Okay. So, can anyone spot the video game on this slide? It's quite well known. Anyone? Seriously. To grow the beard, does it take all the blood from... No, it doesn't matter. So they did... Running in the Halls are not a games company. They're a digital design studio, and they did a game called Pac-Man. And they projected it onto the side of a building down in Docklands for the whole gadget show. And look, they built a massive joystick so the knob end with the glasses can go and play it on telly because, you know, the thumbstick doesn't really work well on TV. They're in the Guinness Book of Records. Does doing a Pac-Man game make you a games company? I would say so. Right? If you're going, yes, but they didn't invent it, then any company that's ever ported something doesn't count either. They also did, also for the gadget show, a massive Battlefield 3 simulator. Right? So you got this huge moving floor so that you could run and jump and crouch and do all sorts of awesome things. They set up paintball guns, so if people shot you, you got hurt. Physical pain. That's something that I think the games industry can get on board with. And it's Battlefield 3. That's a real game. They're not a games company. And the next project is they're doing a gamification project that allows libraries to make things a little bit more playful and a little bit more fun. I think that's awesome. But then again, I'm a reader. They're not a games company. They're a digital design studio. Why isn't a games company doing this? Does anyone know any games companies that are doing this kind of thing? Okay, if you're going to heckle, at least be audible.
We would.
Sorry?
We would.
We would. Oh, right. I was wondering if that was a company I hadn't actually heard of. We would? Like Tiny Woods? Here's the problem, before this all gets out of hand. Here's the problem. The games industry is really good at talking to the games industry about the games industry. We have whole events where the games industry goes to hear from the games industry what the games industry is doing. But you know what? We're not all that. We're not the only tech sector in the world. When we were doing things that only appeared on Xboxes and PlayStations, we could afford to be insular and isolated as the Waltons. The fact that we had three-eyed children meant nothing to anybody else because the TV people, the film people, nobody else actually cared. You saw the slides of Wayne Rooney, right? There's a reason he looks like that. We never look up from the monitor. We don't. We like living in our studios. The fact that you guys came along tonight is a massive testimony to how forward-looking and outgoing and engaging you are. Okay? The number of CEOs, company directors who are here tonight is quite small. Garrity being the exception. Because they're... Sorry, Jamie. Yeah. I couldn't see a light in my eyes. I thought you were still in the bar. But we never look up from the screen. We don't look at the rest of the world. We don't know what's going on outside the games industry. And we keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, only in slightly better graphic detail. Go us! That's innovation. So we keep pumping out stuff. Time after time after time. We keep doing the same games. We keep running into the same problems. We keep going, well, that last game didn't work. You know what? Something else came out at the same time, or, you know, it was over Christmas, so maybe we should have done it free to play. Oh no, free to play has been spoiled by EA. We just need to... Tell you what, let's do the same thing again next time. It will probably work then, because that's how the life works. Do you want to know the biggest problem? Do you want to know whose fault this is? It's this guy's fault. That's Keith. Fuck you, Keith. You know why it's Keith's fault? Because Keith works at your company. And you know what? You know why it's his fault? It's his turn. You did Andrew's game, and then you did Peter's game. Now it's Keith's turn. That's how we go. That's how we work in the games industry. We're marvellously egalitarian. We're really democratic. Everyone gets a turn. Okay, we did your game, it's his turn next. You know what? His game idea is awful. Actually, Andrew's game and Peter's game were pretty bad as well. 5 downloads between them. But hey, let's keep it all democratic. The issue that we have is that we keep going around the same loop. We want to do games that we're going to be proud of, that everyone else in this room is going to praise us for, and we're not looking beyond the markets that we already control and that we're already in. You're competing against Epic and Activision and Blizzard. These guys have been doing it for quite a while. I understand some of them are moderately successful. So you're still chasing the guy sitting in the room full of games with a Sega t-shirt on. Now, before you dismiss this utterly and go, well, Brian came along and he sort of said some swears, and then he said that we should all go out and basically prostitute ourselves and just do work for hire, and we don't want to do, you know, a game for One Direction. I'm not saying that at all. Stop saying that. Seriously, stop saying that. You're thinking it, I can tell right now. That's not what I'm saying. If you don't want to do that, don't do that. You need to be aware of the rest of the world. Anyone who thinks this is a bad deal for either Oculus Rift or Facebook or games is an idiot. Actually, I'll go further. You're a moron. Facebook have acquired a really hot tech company for quite a small amount of money. They're not going to bury it or put it away or demand that you put Farmville on it. They're going to nurture it and invest in it and see where it goes. And then potentially they're going to either flog it, or they're going to stick it out on public offering, which means that you float it on the stock market. Just, you know, that's their exit strategy. Anyone here heard about an exit strategy that's not involved with a fire alarm? Yeah, that's kind of what I thought. And for the star prize on the Scottish Games, who went, but Facebook do really shit games. Here's the thing, Facebook don't make games. Facebook is a platform. It's an interactive digital platform. What you may be complaining about is the fact that Zynga made shit games. And Zynga made games that were massively popular, but not terribly nice. And they kind of kiboshed it for everybody. But don't confuse the people making the content with the people who make the platform. That's like saying Microsoft ruined it for everybody because their games are rubbish. We get very, very excited by the size of the games industry, the growth potential of the games industry. We see lots and lots of figures that go, bigger than Hollywood box office. I will admit, I go and talk to people in the film sector and television and everything, and I go, yeah, the games industry, bigger than the Hollywood box office. And it's growing all the time, you know. But that's not going to be the case. This is an industry that's constantly evolving, that's constantly being pushed forward by new technology. If you read the piece on VentureBeat a couple of weeks ago about the growth of the new consoles, the Xbox One and PlayStation 4 versus the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3, you're going to realise that maybe the future's not as rosy as you might think, because they're competing against iPads and Androids and iPhones and browsers. You don't have to go out and spend 500 quid for a device that watches you and reports your body movement to the NSA if you don't want to. You have choices. People have choices now. The games industry is changing, yet the people making the games aren't. I don't know what the future's going to bring, right? And I don't know anybody who does. And I read a lot of different news sources. I read a lot of different commentators. Most of them are come from outside the games industry. If you read only stuff that is within the games industry, you'll understand that VR is the future, that mobile is evil, free-to-play doesn't work, and that Edge is still a popular magazine. None of those things could be true. So I don't know where this is going. I really don't. But it's all changing, and it's all changing all the time. And we, the people making the games, have to change with it. Because here's the sad fact, ladies and gentlemen, it's getting easier to make games. There are tools out there that will allow 14-year-olds to make games. Yo-Yo Games, who we'll all agree are a splendid company. Zapcoder in Glasgow, who got 70k from Creative Scotland. We've got RunRev in Edinburgh, who are putting the technology to make games into the hands of teenagers. I asked a question at a panel down at Develop in Brighton last June and said, so if every school across the whole of the UK can now make games, and you've got coder clubs, and you've got Raspberry Pis and all of these things, What happens if we get a tsunami of content? We get even more games coming out. So instead of Scotland producing 93 games in 2013, we have Scotland producing 450, 500 games in 2015. And the response from the panel was, that's not going to happen because making games is hard. Excellent, glad I asked, thanks. And you can distribute games. You make a game, you can hit a button, you can distribute it globally. You can release a game at 9 o'clock on a Monday morning. By 12:30, you know if it's working, if it's not working, if people are dropping out 2 minutes in. If it's doing really well in Russia, you can go get on the phone and have a Russian translation implemented and update it. We have got distribution that the rest of the creative world would weep and gnaw its own arm off for, and they don't know it. There are film production companies who are going to Kickstarter to raise 30 grand to get their film around 20 indie cinemas across the UK. You know, coming from the digital background, my response is, if I want to watch a film on my iPhone, let me. The sanctity of the cinema-going experience doesn't really appeal to me, unless there's beer, and I can get the guy who's using his iPhone in the middle of the theatre and stick it up his arse. In fact, I would pay 25 quid if that was a feature. And this is important, which is why I used an important slide. Games are being taken seriously. For the first time ever in history, games are being taken seriously by the rest of the world. All of the interesting conversations I've had, all of the interesting events I've been to, have been outside the games world. We've got a cross-party group on video games technology in Scotland. It happens at Holyrood. We chair it, being the Games Network. It's awesome. It also means that I'm very, very important. Kind of. I think it's just because I own a suit jacket. Games are being taken seriously. People outside the games world are now wondering how we get a slice of this. How do we use this technology? Because they don't know. We're seen as this weird, isolated little silo. And yet here we are with all of these companies, all of these industries, all of these different areas wanting to talk to us, wanting to work with us. And what are we getting upset about? Facebook bought Oculus. And this guy did a game that did really well, and he's not a proper game developer. We're going to cut his head off, and it's like write nasty letters to his mum. Seriously? Because it happened to use graphics that look a bit like Mario, and because he's not a recognised game developer? Fuck that. We're better than that. We're a lot better than that. I've spent over 20 years working in the games industry now. I could have gone and got a real job. It would have sucked, but I could have gone and got a real job. So here's a little bit of a reality check for all of you, whether you're students, whether you're working in the games industry, wherever you happen to be. There are people out there who need you. There are people out there who desperately need you. There are filmmakers, there are musicians, there are writers, there are artists, there are performing actors, there are theatre companies, travel and tourism, food and drink, all of these different industries are trying to find ways of making interactive media more exciting and more interesting and more fun and more engaging. Because you know what, when people are having fun, they tend to give you more money. See Farmville. Well, okay, that's a really bad example, isn't it? See GT, no, GT is not a really good example. There's bound to be a game out there that was fun and made money. I'll look it up. It's bound to be there somewhere. I'll look at Edge. They've got everything. But they need us. They need us. You see? Told you I was going to use your photo. They need the game developers, not digital design agencies, not jumped up web developers. They need us. We bring the fun. A web developer can maybe make something. Seriously, are you going to die up there? I'm building up to the climax, but if you want to get the expectoration out now, no? Okay, that's fine. Web design companies, see, you totally threw me off. Bastard. Web developers can make things functional. They don't necessarily know how to add the fun. We're all about the fun, but fun's become a dirty word because we're all about the challenge and about the experience. Screw that. We know how to make things fun. We play games. All of us. Every day. We know how to do this. We know how to make things better, how to make people happy. Unless, obviously, you make Flappy Bird. But that guy wasn't a real game developer, so I don't think it counts. Or we can carry on the way we are. We can carry on cannibalising our own audiences. We can carry on complaining about free-to-play and how it's driving the race to the bottom and how nobody can make any money. And then we can have big panels at GDC and we can stand up and go, nobody cares. And it's EA were evil and now EA are doing free-to-play and now the consumer market doesn't care. And a guy in Vietnam made a game that's better than mine and I've been working in the industry for 20 years. We can do that. Or we can just look up from the monitor and look at the rest of the world and realise we've got the power. We've got the creativity and talent to go out and make things genuinely better. Do we actually have the balls to go and do it? That's me. That was a dramatic pause. The end.